All right, so today we're going to talk about boundary intruders. Boundary intruders. How many of you deal with boundary intruders? We all deal with boundary intruders. Like I was telling you, when me and Ivy first got married, there were two completely different families who came together. We had a place that we wanted to go, and we had a place where some of our family members were at, some of our friends were at, and it just didn't fit into where we wanted to go. And he would try to set these boundaries up, and I was scared to death because I was so afraid they won't like us if we set these boundaries up. Is it okay to set boundaries up? And then the more I read in God's word, I saw that Jesus had boundary intruders too. There are always people telling Jesus what he should do, what he shouldn't do, what he should say, what he shouldn't say, where he should go, where he should not go. So I love what Jesus says about boundary intruders in Matthew 23:4. He says, they load you with impossible demands. Do you ever feel like that? Somebody's just loading you with impossible demands, demands that they themselves don't even try to keep. And that's what boundary intruders do. They put, they say, they try to break into your space, and they would never, ever, ever tolerate from you what they're trying to do to you. Like they're trying to move into your space and tell you what you should do and what you shouldn't do, but they would never tolerate it from you. So how can you tell when boundary intruders have invaded your space? This is going to be your first blank. Do you ever get around somebody and you just feel weary? Weary is your first blank. You know you're going to be with them, you know you're going to spend some time with them, and all of a sudden you start feeling stressed. You're feeling anxious. You're feeling fearful and guilty. I'll never forget, there was this one person that I spent time with on Friday for many, many years, and we would get ready to go to the boys' football games. And I would tell Ivy, I'm already overwhelmed. I don't even know what they're going to do. I'm stressed out. I can't even go to the football game and have fun. I don't know if they're going to show up drunk or not show up drunk. I don't know if they're going to be on the side of the fence cheering them on and embarrassing the kids. So I was stressed every single Friday. I was just feeling weary. The next one is you feel worn out. Have you ever been around anybody and you just feel worn out? You feel taken advantage of, underappreciated, manipulated. You're constantly doing what they want to do. Or maybe your next blank, you just feel weak. You feel weak. You feel like you can't say no. If you say no, you know there's going to be some horrible circumstances that are moving your way, and it's going to be exaggerated. It's going to be all about them. So you just start feeling weak. Or maybe you feel trapped. You feel enslaved to their happiness. What do you want to do? You have to tiptoe around them. These boundary intruders have learned to get their way by violating boundaries. They will never stop on their own. You and I have to learn the healthy art of saying no and the healthy art of setting boundaries. So as we begin today, I want to give you 5 different areas if you want to have healthy boundaries that you need to work on. 5 different things you need to believe. The first one is this. It's going to be a blank for you. You have to believe that you deserve boundaries. You have to believe that you deserve boundaries. You know, someone can tell if you believe in yourself or not. Someone can tell if they can take advantage of you easy. Someone can tell if you're confident in who you are in Christ or if you're not confident in who you are in Christ. So you have to love yourself enough to set and enforce healthy boundaries. And you may be thinking, what? Isn't that like thinking too much of myself? Is it okay for me to set boundaries? Is it okay for me to believe that I deserve boundaries? That my self-worth is enough that I deserve putting healthy boundaries in place? And Jesus taught us about this. Jesus taught us that if we don't even love ourselves, we can't love others. In Matthew 22:39, he says this, a second commandment is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. And Ivy has talked about this so many times with us. If we don't love ourselves, it's impossible for us to love others. What are some signs that you do not love yourself properly? And I was just praying through, like, in the beginning of our journey when we were really struggling just to set boundaries, what are some things that I would frequently say? I would say things like this. I need to be in this relationship. I really need to be in this relationship. I would say, well, at least this relationship isn't as bad as the last one. I mean, I know she's not a good friend and she takes from me, but you know what? It's not like the friend I used to have. At least it's not that bad. Or I would say things like, they would be lost without me. How many of you said that about a friend or a family member? They would be lost without me. I mean, could Jesus really bring somebody else into their life? They'd be completely lost without me. And I would say things like, it just needs a little bit more time. For years, I told Ivy, when he was trying to set some boundaries, babe, listen, we just need a little bit more time. God's going to fix them. Everything's going to be okay. We just need a little bit more time. And I would say, they're not always this way. You ever said that? Sometimes they're nice. I mean, they're not always this way. They're working things out too. The thing that is in common with all of those statements that I used to make were excuses. They were just excuses for me not loving myself properly. And the truth be told, and this is your next blank, the biggest boundary violator is not others in our life, but it's ourselves. The biggest boundary violator is not others, but it's ourselves. 1 Corinthians 16:3 says, be on guard. Now watch this pattern throughout this scripture. Be on guard. Stand firm in the faith. Be courageous. Be strong. And do everything in love. Be on guard. Stand firm in the faith. Be courageous. Be strong. And do everything in love. Standing firm starts with believing that you deserve boundaries. Everybody say boundaries. The second thing you have to do, and this is extremely challenging, it's going to be your next blank. You have to love without rescuing. You have to love without rescuing. Proverbs 19:19 says, hot-tempered people must pay the penalty. If you rescue them once, you'll have to do it over and over again. Codependency and enmeshment is built when we do these things. We do whatever is necessary to avoid conflict. Do you have anybody in your life that you do whatever is necessary to avoid conflict? Before you're ever with them, you start thinking about what you're not going to do so that you don't upset them, so that you keep the peace, so that everybody's happy. You provide assistance when they make poor choices. You provide assistance. They keep making the same poor choices, and you keep assisting them. You act as though this is just a one-time event. It's just this one time. Just let me help them this one time. You feel responsible for their well-being. You make excuses for their behavior and choices. You put their needs ahead of your own. Galatians 6:5 says, for we are each responsible for our own conduct. We're each responsible for our own conduct. Creating boundaries for people is the healthy way of letting them grow and mature. We can't force anybody to grow. But when we set healthy boundaries, they have to deal with their own consequences, and then they're forced to grow. Parents know this. If you're healthy parents, you know this. Proverbs 19:18 says, discipline your children while there is hope. Discipline your children while there is hope. Otherwise, you will ruin their lives. Discipline your children while there is hope. Otherwise, you will ruin their lives. If you constantly rescue your children from the consequences of their choices, you'll be doing it the rest of their life. The rest of their life. And that's not easy. I've set some difficult boundaries up with all of our kids at different times. And as a mom, my heart was breaking. I was like, this is too hard. I don't know if I can do this. But I had to trust that God was leading him. I had to let God lead him. My nurturing heart made it very hard to set boundaries. So if there's parents in here and you're really struggling in that area and your husband is like, no, we really need to set these boundaries. How about supporting him with setting the boundaries? Jordan Peterson says this, remember there's never a time when you will stop being their parent, but there is a time when you should stop parenting. There's never a time that I'll stop being their parent, but there is a time that you have to stop parenting. Number 3, your next blank, you have to care enough to confront. You have to care enough to confront. Now, how many are already pitting out? Like, I don't like confrontation. I don't like it. How many don't like confrontation? You know what's so great? God's going to give you so many opportunities to confront until you kind of like confrontation. I'll never forget one time CB said, why do I keep having to have these horrible conversations? God was trying to put her in a place of confidence to be able to confront things that need to be confronted. But that's not easy at all. Ephesians 4:15 says this, speak the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ. Your next blank is this, there is no growth without truth. There is no growth without truth. We kind of say it like this here. Kind is clear and clear is kind. Kind is clear and clear is kind. You can't grow unless you have people in your life who are willing to tell you the truth. And the people in your life can't grow unless you're willing to tell them the truth. But it's uncomfortable, isn't it? It's uncomfortable, and you start to feel your heart race, and you go, oh gosh, I know I'm going to tell them the truth, but they're probably going to be mad at me, and they're not going to like me, and if I tell them the truth, they're going to talk about me. But I can tell you from experience, the most, where I have grown the most in my life is where people were courageous enough to tell me the truth. Now, the truth hurts. The truth can be offensive, but the Bible says the truth is what sets us free. So you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. Because often think about if this is your pattern through life. We bottle up, or we blow up, or we cover up. You bottle up, you stuff it, stuff it, until one day you can't stuff it anymore, and then you explode, and you're screaming, and you're yelling, and it's all their fault, when God was giving you opportunities to have conversations with them, but you chose to stuff it, and then you just blow up on someone. If you don't bottle up or blow up, sometimes we just cover it up. How many of you came from a family where it's like, no, that didn't happen. No, that didn't happen. Let's just stuff it right under the rug, and let's just put our face on, and let's put our smile on and just go on. Let's just cover it up. And those things will not work. You're going to be forced to have the conversation. And if you keep stuffing it, or you keep blowing up, or you keep covering up, you're going to end up hating that person. You're going to end up not wanting to be in a relationship with them at all. And then your next friend that you have, you're going to have these same conversations with, because God's trying to do something in you in the meantime. Ephesians 4:25 says this, stop lying to each other. What if we just did that? Stop lying to each other. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. What if somebody, was about to make a horrible decision? Could you tell them the truth? Could you say, hey, listen, Amy, I'm super nervous, and I'm really uncomfortable having this conversation with you, but I love you so much. I'm like, I can't catch my breath. Ooh, I'm nervous. But that thing you're about to do is really going to cost you a lot. And I'm uncomfortable having this conversation with you, but I love you enough that I don't want to see you get run over by this train. And I'm willing to risk our relationship because I love you that much. And in this conversation, I know God's doing a lot in me because I am pitting out and I'm scared. What about if you were just honest? Most of the time, we're not honest when we go into a conversation, so we get nervous and we try to be this confident person that we're not. We go, listen, Amy, if you would just stop doing that and stop acting stupid, everything wouldn't be that bad. Instead of just being honest and saying, I'm nervous and uncomfortable. So tell the truth, for we are parts of each other. And when we lie to each other, we're only hurting ourselves. We must courageously confront boundary intruders if there's ever going to be change. So here's some tips for having hard conversations. Stick to the facts. If you just stick to the facts, share your heart in love, you're kind but you're clear, you stick to the facts, the conversation will go much better. You need to watch your words and watch your body language. When you're having a conversation that's hard with somebody, if I'm talking to Amy, I'm like, you know what? You do this all the time. I mean, you always do this. I'm not sticking to the facts, and look at my body language. It's like I'm better than you. Really, I'm scared, so I'm trying to hold myself back. So watch your body language. Watch your eyes. Watch your expressions. Take a deep breath. If you get going in the conversation, it's uncomfortable, just say the truth. Say, I'm uncomfortable. When people become furious, I love this, you become curious. So when people become furious, you become curious. Hey, tell me more about that, Amy. You seem really upset. Can you tell me a little bit why you're upset? Laura, what's making you so upset in this moment? Can we talk about that just a little bit? When somebody else becomes furious, and really they're becoming furious because they're embarrassed. So when they become furious, you become curious. Seek clarity more than resolution. The results are never up to you, but the obedience is. And God is using this conversation in your life because he's trying to mold you and he's trying to shape you. It's not an accident. It's not a coincidence. God's trying to mold you and he's trying to shape you. Number 4, you have to protect yourself. Your blank is protect. You have to protect yourself. Proverbs 4:23 says this, guard your heart. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. Guard whose heart? Your heart. The Bible says you are responsible for guarding your own heart. That means enforcing healthy boundaries. So I'm going to give you 5 different boundaries right now to set to protect your heart. 5 different boundaries to set to protect your heart. The first one is emotional boundaries. You have to be willing to have emotional boundaries. You have to determine who is and who is not allowed to access your feelings. You have to determine who's allowed and who's not allowed to access your feelings. If we're having a conversation, I'm having a conversation with Shelby and she says something to me and it offends me and I know she's already struggling and I just get all in my feelings and jump in the conversation with her, I'm not in control of my own feelings anymore. I'm giving her control of my feelings. So what you have to do is you have to remember, you've worked so hard and you're on this wall of freedom. So I'm standing on a wall of freedom and I've walked through valleys and I've walked through all these hard things where God's molding me and shaping me. And then he's going to give me an opportunity to put it to practice. And that opportunity is going to be in a conversation maybe with me and Shelby. So I have to decide, if she becomes furious, I'm not going to take it personal. Just because you're upset doesn't mean I have to come off my wall of freedom. And then you can't blame other people. You can't say, see what you're doing? You're just making me mad. You're making me so angry. I was trying to stand on my wall of freedom here. I'm so healthy. I was trying to stand on my wall of freedom, and now I'm just wallowing in this with you. See what you've done to me? You can't blame other people. You have to decide who has access to your feelings and who doesn't. And then you have to decide how much of your personal life is available to someone else. How much of your personal life is available to someone else? No one deserves 24-hour access to your life. If they have 24-hour access to your life, you're not going to have time to spend with God. You're not going to have time to nurture relationships. Your life's going to be all kind of out of balance, like Justin talked about several weeks ago. You've got to determine that. Just because your phone says beep doesn't mean you have to answer it. If you went and looked at my phone right now, I take my messages and my phone call. I have to slide 4 screens to be able to see if I have a text message because I don't want to be accessible 24 hours a day. That's not healthy. The next one is this. You have to have conversational boundaries. That's your blank. Conversational boundaries. You have to be respectful of people's perspective. You have to have conversational boundaries. And they have to be respectful of your perspective. You don't have to be right all the time. And you have to treat other people's ideas and opinions with dignity rather than dismissal. Just because you're in a conversation with someone and they're saying something, that doesn't mean they're right. You don't have to argue with them. Just because they think something, it doesn't mean it's right. And sometimes we will argue with a 2-year-old because they're wrong. No, you can't do that. Yes, I can. No, you can't. Yes, I can. No, you can't. And we'll act like a fool when we're trying to raise up our kids. Act like me, and we're acting like them. So you have to make sure that you're treating people with the same respect that you want to be treated. Number 3, you have to have physical boundaries. Having physical boundaries is okay. If you're in here and you're a teenager and you're dating someone, you need to set your physical boundaries. You need to say, who do you think you are? Cam, if some boy comes up to you and tries to hold your hand, excuse me, I am Cam Potter. You can't just walk up and hold my hand. You can't do that. It was so funny. Molly was telling me there was this guy, And what did he tell you to do? Oh, yeah. She was in a store the other day, gas station, and this guy, if you're in here, sorry, she didn't know it was you, but there was this guy, and he tapped on her shoulder and said, "Can you roll up my sleeves?" She's like, "I'm on the phone, no." I said, "Good." Who walks up to somebody and says, a young girl, she's on the phone. Like, who does he think he is? You have to set these boundaries. If not, people will always intrude your boundaries. If you're dating, you have to say, okay, here's my line. You know what? We're not even going to kiss because I can't control myself and we'll be making out. So here's my line right here. We're not even going to kiss. So here's my boundary right here. You have to set boundaries with friends. You have to set boundaries with your kids. You have to set boundaries are good for you. So set physical boundaries, personal space, personal contact. You know, I have to be careful with this because I'm a toucher. And Ivy gets on to me all the time. So you know, if you've been in a conversation with me, you know I'm probably touching you. And I have to be careful. I'll never forget one time I was touching somebody and their wife was standing there. And I thought, oh, they have a wife. I don't need to be touching them. That's so weird. But I don't think about that. I'm just kind of a toucher. So Ivy's good for me. He reminds me, hey, babe, give people space. Hey, babe, you've been on the phone just a little bit too long. You've been talking too long. You know, they're trying to get off the phone with you. Set some boundaries. You have to recognize that you were raised in a specific set of cultural norms that may not be normal to someone else. Your norms may not be normal to someone else. I was having Lindsay's baby shower a couple of weeks ago, and Garrett was upstairs changing clothes. It was all these ladies downstairs, and Garrett comes bebopping down the stairs because it's on his mind, I'm going to cut the grass. So if I'm going to cut the grass, why am I going to put a shirt on? Like, I'm in my shorts. I'm just going to cut the grass. It makes no sense because that's a cultural norm to him. I'm just glad they have pants on, you know? But a couple of women were like, your kids are naked. I'm like, they are? Because if you say that about a Marsh kid, I'm scared because they might be naked. You have to respect each other's boundaries. You have to understand what's normal to someone and what's not normal to someone else. You have to think about other people. And number 4, you have to set relational boundaries. Relational boundaries. There's an unwritten code of expectations that we bring into relationships. So you have to set those relational boundaries. What I expect from and of you and what you expect, want, and need from me. You need to have those conversations when you get into relationships. If not, somebody will run over you. If I'm going to mentor someone, I'll say, okay, what do you think me mentoring you looks like? Do you think it means that, yeah, you can call me any time of the day and I'm going to just rescue you from your problems? Well, I was hoping so. Well, no, that's not how it's going to be. You want to communicate those boundaries so people know what your expectations are, know what your desires are. The keys to relational boundaries are trust and communication. And I love this next statement. People will always violate what I fail to communicate. People will always violate what I fail to communicate. So you can't get mad at your mother-in-law if you've never had a conversation with your mother-in-law. You can't get mad and say, she's crossing these boundaries. She needs to back up. Honey, you go tell her. You go tell her she needs to back up. You need to go tell her. You need to be able, that's the tool that God's using to chisel you. You go have a conversation with her and say, hey, here's my boundaries. And I'm going to be kind, I'm going to be clear, but here's my boundaries. Number 5 is you have to have time boundaries. Colossians 4:5 says this, walk in wisdom towards outsiders, making the best use of time. You have to have time boundaries. We have 168 hours in a week, and you and I get to decide how we spend those hours. You have to have time boundaries. Again, everybody is not accessible to you all the time. Time is your most limited and valuable asset. Make sure you're setting healthy time boundaries. Wise people align their convictions with their calendar. Wise people align their convictions with their calendar. Others cannot steal what you truly value. When I'm coaching someone, I always tell them this. I'll say, let's talk about your core values. What are your core values? What do you really believe? What are the unique things to your family that God's put on your heart, the core of who you are, the core that stabilizes you? What are your core values? Do you live by your core values? Or do you let other people intrude in your boundaries and it's hard to stand up for your core values? Do you feel like it's okay to say, hey, you can't cross this boundary because I don't agree with that? That doesn't mean you're bad. These are just my deep convictions. And I'm not going to give in to that. You have to learn to live by your deep convictions. Matthew 5:37 says this, say a simple yes, I will, or no, I won't. Anything beyond that, see if you've ever read this before, anything beyond that is from the evil one. Let me read it again. Say a simple yes, I will, or no, I won't. Anything beyond that is from the evil one. Everybody say no. We need to get better at saying no. Saying no is okay. That's not mean. Now, if you are mean and you're saying no all the time, now we need to have a conversation about that, but if you're feeling guilty all the time and you can't say no, that's not healthy. Why do we struggle with setting time boundaries? Because so many of us are people pleasers. We care more about what other people think about us than we do the convictions that God's put on our heart. I care more about how I'm going to look in front of you instead of living by the convictions that are on my heart. And saying no can evoke an emotional response. So if I was to say no to you, if I said no, why not? Because I said no. And I'm not trying to be mean, but I said no. Well, you're a pastor. You ought to be doing that. Did you read that in Scripture? I was just curious. Who told you that? Because I think we're both accountable to God. I think we both are supposed to live this out in the kingdom life. When we learn to say no, we are saying, I love myself enough not to be used. I love myself enough not to be manipulated. I love myself enough not to be taken advantage of. We're saying, I'm in control of my calendar, you're not. And parents need to learn this one. You need to learn to be in charge of your calendar and not your kids. You're not a human taxi driver. I don't know where we came up with this term, that I'm just a taxi driver. God doesn't say that about you. He says, I gave you these kids and I entrusted these kids with you for you to lead them back to me. You don't get to determine what my calendar is. You're a kid. You're 5 years old. You can't tell us what our calendar is going to be because we have a set of core values that we live by and somewhere that we're going. And God's called us to make a difference in the kingdom. And this is not going to be a child-led home. This is going to be a parent-led home. You have to value what you say you value. You have to live that out. It shows that my clarity and shows clarity of my priorities. It shows that I'm the only one who will give an account for my life. No one else is going to give an account for your life. And it's not a mistake, the things you're walking in and the things you're struggling in. Maybe that hard conversation you have with your mom about her drinking and that it's not appropriate in front of your kids. And if you're in here and you're an alcoholic, I'm not judging you at all. I want to walk beside you and help you find freedom. But if you're in here, and I was this young mom, and there was people in our family that were alcoholics, and they were just falling down drunk, and we had to have hard conversations. But I wouldn't be the person I am today if I hadn't had those hard conversations. Maybe the conversations that God's wanting you to have with your sister or your best friend, and you go, I can't have that conversation. I mean, she's been my friend forever. If I say that to her, she won't like me anymore. Well, maybe she was just your friend for a reason or a season, but not a lifetime. And maybe God has 5 new friends he's wanting to bring into your life, but you have to be able to stand up and speak the truth in love to these friends. It also says, I know and I accept my limitations. I know and I accept my limitations. You can't tell me that I burned you out if you're not taking responsibility for your own life. You have to know your limitations. You have to be willing to say, if you're on a team here and you're serving and you're worn out and you're tired, you have to be willing to have a hard conversation and say, hey, Josh, I would love to teach a small group this time, but I am working like 12 hours, 6 days a week. I can't even find time for my family, and I am all kind of out of order. And Josh is going to say, I'm so proud of you. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for having this conversation. But instead, a lot of times what we do, we're intimidated to having a hard conversation. We don't like confrontation. The Lord's trying to lead us into confrontation, and we turn around and start blaming them before we ever can have a conversation with them. Well, I'm not going to tell Josh. If I tell Josh, he's just going to judge me, and that's how they do. They all judge me, and we create this scenario that's not even true. You have to know and accept your limitations. Setting healthy boundaries does not convert boundary intruders into boundary respecters. You have to, number 5, you have to be consistent. Hebrews 10:23 says this, let us hold fast to the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. Galatians 6:9 says, and let us not get tired of doing what is right. For after a while, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we don't get discouraged and give up. I know it's hard setting healthy boundaries. It's hard for me too. I want you to love me. I want you to like me. But we have to keep doing the right thing. Psalms 89:34 says, I will not violate. Everybody say violate. I will not violate my covenant or alter the word that went forth from my lips. My yes will be yes and my no will be no. I've lost many relationships having boundaries. I'm sure you've lost relationships too. It's not easy setting boundaries. But if you want to go where God wants you to go, if you want to have the life that God intended for you to have, if you want to make a difference in this earth and make a difference in the kingdom, you have to get comfortable with having confrontation. Confrontation isn't bad unless you make it bad. Confrontation is good. But you have to be kind and you have to be clear. You have to believe that you deserve to have boundaries. You have to love without rescuing, parents. You have to love without rescuing. You have to be willing to, and we were just talking to a parent the other day, be willing to let them make the wrong decision even when you know they're making the wrong decision. How hard is that? They come to you and they're like, I really think I'm going to do this, and you know it's the absolute wrong decision. They have to learn on their own. They're accountable to God. So it's okay to let them make the wrong decision. You have to care enough to confront. Everybody say confront. Say, I can confront. Say, I can confront. I'm not going to throw up. I can confront. I'm not going to get an upset stomach. I can have healthy confrontation. I'm a child of God. I'm a daughter of the King. I'm a son of the King. I have the right. I deserve boundaries. You have to protect yourself, and you have to be consistent. You have to be consistent. Each time that parent starts pushing that boundary, each time that kid starts pushing that boundary, each time that friend starts pushing that boundary, you have to be consistent. You have to be consistent over and over. Laura and Clint and I, we were talking about that this morning. It's hard because you go, are they ever going to learn? But you don't know what God's doing in you. So stop worrying about all this stuff. Stop worrying you're going to hurt somebody's feelings. Stop worrying you're going to push your kid away. And be willing to have hard conversations with boundary intruders. Amen? It's the one thing I promise you. If you can get comfortable with it, you will see God do more than you can think, dream, or imagine in your life. And that relationship that you thought you needed so bad, you're going to have 5 more friends come. You go, I never knew I could have friendships like this. So trust God, confront boundary intruders, and watch God do something amazing in your life. Amen.